Hi y'all, it's Peggy with the Easy Binding Winder, and I just wanted to give you a demo on how to use our tool. So when you open your box, here's what you're going to get. You're going to get a base and tower unit. The base has 3 insertion points for the clamp, and there's also a tension rod between the 2 towers. Okay? You're going to have your clamp. The clamp has this little rod here that goes into the insertion point of your choice. It's got the jaw that goes up and down just like this, and then there's a little wedge here that holds the jaw in place when you secure it to your ironing board. So to use this, you're going to insert this into your base, and then you're going to put your thumb in this little indentation here and just squeeze up until you get the desired tension on the unit, and then push the wedge down, and that holds it in place. And you may see a little bit of a bow after you've pushed the wedge down, and that's okay. That's tension on there that's holding it in place, and it doesn't hurt anything. So to release it, pull up on the little wedge and the jaw will fall. You can take it off your ironing board. Then you also have your crank that goes right into your spool that you wind your binding onto. The spool has a clip on it with a little nub under here that holds your binding in place. If you decide you want to take it off the spool for some reason, it just slips right from out from under that clip. So we're going to get started. I've got a binding here that I want to put on this little wall hanging, so it's a relatively short binding, but we're going to use it. I've got my strips already sewn together. I've got my seams pressed open, and I've cut off my little dog ears, so everything's nice and smooth, ready to go. So I'm going to clamp this to the ironing board. I'm going to stick this in here just like this because I like it on this edge close to me. Make sure when you do this that this tension rod is facing your iron. Okay, so it goes right on here. I want to make sure that the pad on the jaw is going to squeeze up against the crossbar of the ironing board. It's right under here. So I'm squeezing up, push the wedge down, and it's locked into place. Okay? So to get started, take your binding, fold it in half like you normally would, and press a section about probably a foot or so long. Just like that. You want to slip it under the tension bar, pull it up, and slide it underneath the clip on the spool. Just like that. And then, whoops, drop it down into the tower. You want to leave a little tail about that long. It's going to fold in on itself when you start winding, but you're going to cut that off after you join your ends together anyway, so don't worry about that. You've got your crank. You're going to slip it in here just like that. It clicks into place, and now you're going to start winding. So you wind up the section that you've pressed already, and then you want to press, fold, and press another section. Wind that up just like that. And you're going to fold and press again. You're going to wind it again, just like that. Fold. Press. And wind. So normally, when I'm doing this, before I had the Easy Binding Winder, I would do this, and as I'm pressing a section, I would just throw it off to the end of the ironing board. Sometimes it'd fall off. Most of the times I managed to keep it in a pile over here. But this is what I wound up with, just a big rat's nest of binding. Now, I have it all nice and neat on here. So as I'm pressing it, fold, press, and wind. We're almost to the end of this binding. And there we go. That's the end of that. Finish winding it up on here, just like that. Now, to take it off of here, let's say I'm nice and organized and I've made this binding and I'm going to store it until I get my quilt quilted and it's ready to go on the quilt. So, to take the handle out, squeeze the thumb tabs and just give it a little push through here and then squeeze the towers, pull the crank out, and this just slips right out. So now I've got a nice neat little roll of binding. Again, this is only for a wall hanging size, but this will easily hold a king size binding. So I could have this, or I could have this. My old way was this way, and then I would wind up doing this, twisting it around my hand or around something else, and have a big twisted mess here to deal with. I don't have any of that frustration anymore. I've got a nice neat little roll of binding and I'm ready to put it on my quilt. So let's go do that. Okay, so I've got my easy binding winder. I'm going to set it down right here beside my sewing machine. I'm taking the crank out because it doesn't need to be in there. You can leave it in, either way, it's fine. I'm just going to set it right here. It doesn't need to be clamped down, at least not on my sewing table. And this is just a plain wood table. It's not really a sewing table. It just sits right here. So this is going to feed right off of here just like this. And I'm just going to start putting it on my quilt. Just like I would any other time, any other quilt. Just like this. So here we go. This just feeds under here, just like you're doing any other binding. And we're just going to start sewing. Okay, so I want you to notice, while I'm putting this binding on here, I'm not having to do really anything except concentrate on sewing, because this is just feeding off of here nice and neat, and I don't have to think about it. I don't have to worry about it. It's not getting caught under anything. The critters aren't running off with the end of it. It just feeds off of there just as nice and neatly as you please. And I am just sewing. I am doing what I love best. I'm just sewing. I don't have to think about it. I can just keep going until I get all the way around this quilt. So I'm just going to keep going until I get this binding all the way around. I'm not going to bore you with that. I'm not going to show you how I join the ends together because this is not a binding tutorial. But as you can see, this is just feeding off of here as nice as can be. Sitting still the way it's supposed to. Doesn't have to be clamped down. Handle doesn't need to be in it. I'm just going to keep going until I'm done and I'm not being frustrated with my binding anymore. Thank you for your time. We hope you find this video instructional and helpful. If you ever have any questions, we have a contact form at www.easybindingwinder.com. Drop us a line. Let us know what you think. If you have any questions or need any help at all, we'll be glad to do whatever we can to help you. Thanks again for your time, and remember, don't get your binding in a twist.